Technically, it wasn't Earth's fault the Cephalari ambassador exploded. He shouldn't have insulted the potato salad. The footage was played again, fifth time now. The Galactic Concorde's central chamber, once a place for quiet diplomacy and ceremonial treaties, now buzzed with agitated murmurs and cautious rewinds of a very specific human gathering. In the feed, 3 humans in wrinkled suits stood near the buffet table of the Interstellar Peace Summit on Orlax Prime. One man, chest deep in conversation with a Starnati trade delegate, absent-mindedly stabbed a boiled egg with a toothpick. Another juggled what appeared to be tiny hot dogs in barbecue sauce, claiming they were genuine artifacts of Terran hospitality. And the third, Lieutenant Bradson, wearing a name tag that read, "Hi, I'm a civilian, definitely not military," watched blankly as the Cephalari ambassador puffed up, turned mauve, and combusted after taking a bite of a Midwestern-style potato salad with what he'd described as violent overtones. "Freeze it there," said Grand Arbiter Krillon, rubbing the ridges on his 4 brows. "See? See the human? He doesn't even blink. He just wipes salad off his shirt and says, 'What does he say again?'" An underling played the audio. Bradson's voice came through the speakers. "Should have warned him about the mustard. That's my uncle's recipe. Took out a goat once." The chamber erupted into nervous chittering. The Cephalari delegation remained absent, their chairs empty except for a gelatinous smear that the cleaning drones refused to touch without additional hazard pay. At the far edge of the circle, High Strategist Nolvesh of the Drakari leaned forward with narrowed eyes. "This is why we don't let Earth send actual soldiers to summits anymore," Nolvesh muttered. "Those were just their cultural attachés." General Harkon of Earth, the only human allowed back after the incident, and only via holoprojection, smiled through his translucent image. He wore a Hawaiian shirt and held what appeared to be a corn dog. "Now you see why we bring our chefs instead of Marines. Marines would have ended the whole summit before the dessert." Krillon glared at him. "You consider that summit a success?" "Depends on your definition," Harkon said. "Nobody shot each other. Trade with the Glarn improved by 30%. And frankly, the Cephalari were getting a little mouthy. I told our people not to escalate. They didn't. He escalated into flames. That's just physics." A silence settled as multiple species processed the peculiar logic humans applied to conflict prevention. Ambassador Zay of the Shalarn blinked slowly. "You humans are unique. Your presence introduces variables no simulation can model. Even your food behaves like hostile ordnance. The potato salad incident followed last cycle's chili disaster. Before that, what was it? Exploding pickles." "Pickled eggs, actually," Harkon corrected helpfully. "We warned the Heltari, but no, they had to challenge Danvers to a stomach duel. Guy was raised in Louisiana, took down a bioengineered apex predator with a jambalaya so spicy it left teeth marks on the serving spoon." "Humans are genetically and culturally incompatible with diplomacy," shouted Ambassador Lekvoth of the Vortian Axis, slamming a webbed appendage against the table. "You know what their so-called peace museum displays in its center atrium? A nuclear missile, with ribbons on it." "It's decommissioned," Harkon said. "That's not the point." Zay raised a hand, the chamber quieting again. "No one doubts humans' military effectiveness. The problem is your definition of peace. It seems to include open flame, digestive warfare, and the collapse of weaker-willed species into food-induced catatonia." "You invited us to the buffet," Harkon replied. "Our treaties specify freedom of culinary expression." "Let's go back further," Krillon said, "to the original summit on Nora 4, the one that started this whole problem." Everyone groaned. They remembered that one. At the time, Earth was a new member of the Concorde, excitable, naive, eager to prove its commitment to galactic harmony. They'd sent a full delegation from the Terran Defense Corps, well-dressed, restrained, all trained in cultural sensitivity. And yet, within 6 minutes of arriving, 2 Karkathi nobles were hospitalized. A Loxi chorus leader had suffered a psychic fracture after overhearing a human private humming Bohemian Rhapsody, and the planetary defense grid had mysteriously realigned itself to orbit around a human-issued portable radio left unattended near the negotiation table. Earth apologized, extensively, sent flowers, even offered free tickets to something called monster truck diplomacy, which was apparently not a metaphor. By the next summit, Earth had swapped soldiers for bureaucrats. That worked slightly better, until one of the interns accidentally used a conference room to host a spontaneous Dungeons and Diplomacy session. The game spiraled out of control when a Glarnian war chief, misunderstanding the premise, tried to actually conquer 3 tables over using a plastic sword in a very persuasive argument. The pattern was established. Humans simply could not attend peace summits without chaos unfolding. Yet they never fired a shot, never raised a weapon. They brought snacks, small talk, and stress-resistant clothing, and still, every summit ended with at least one species vowing never to share air with them again. Perhaps it's intentional, muttered strategist Nolvesh, speaking low to Krillon. Perhaps humans use unpredictability as strategy. They never come armed, but leave everyone else disarmed. What use are weapons when you're still trying to decode what Texas-style diplomacy means? Krillon scowled at the holofeed of Bradson, who was now handing a visibly nervous Glar diplomat a red Solo cup of punch. You're saying humans disarm with confusion? I'm saying, Nolvesh said carefully, Earth doesn't send its military to summits because it doesn't need to. Every civilian they send is already more dangerous than an entire fleet, not by intent, by nature. And if they ever did send their military? Krillon asked. Nolvesh stared at the freeze frame of the punch ladle. We would never recover. Do not speak to me of military budgets, growled Krillon, stabbing a claw at the image of the Earth delegation. That man brought a grill to the summit. The council chamber erupted again, some species chittering, others vibrating in tones of bureaucratic disbelief. The holoscreen looped footage from the recent Neutrality Accord convention on Yedros III. There, in full resolution, stood a bearded human known only as Buck. No last name, no official title. Tending to a smoking barrel smoker, he'd somehow smuggled past 6 layers of customs. Several dignitaries had gathered, drawn in by the aroma, completely abandoning treaty formalities in favor of sampling something he called brisket. The consequence? The signing of the Neutrality Pact was delayed by 3 galactic cycles due to widespread food comas among high-ranking attendees. Not a single clause of the treaty had been reviewed. One Voric ambassador, found half-conscious beneath a table, was quoted muttering, "If this is war, I surrender." That man wasn't even part of the delegation, Zay snapped, throwing up his arms. He was their pilot. General Harkon appeared again via holo, this time seated beside a small aquarium filled with tiny snapping turtles. Earth believes everyone on the team should be diplomatic. That includes logistics personnel. Buck referred to the Draxel Prime Minister as Big Guy, muttered Nolvesh, then fed him cornbread. And now the Draxel fleet has retracted all hostile positioning. Unintended side effect, Harkon said, not bothering to hide his grin. This is why, Krillon said slowly, carefully, we are suggesting once more that Earth cease all physical attendance at peace summits. And we've heard you, Harkon replied. But respectfully, Earth insists on showing up. Presence matters. Yes, that's the problem. The first time humans demonstrated their unique brand of presence, it was the Treaty of Raken Delta. Earth had been invited as observers, non-voting, non-influential. They were told not to interfere. They complied. At first, they were seated on the outer ring, away from the primary negotiators, quiet, curious, eager to learn. But then one of the human delegates, Reed, a former customs officer from Newark, noticed that the Threxian envoys were being served drinks in copper containers, a direct insult in Threxian etiquette. No one else had caught the oversight. Reed had read a travel guide during the shuttle ride in and recognized the symbol. So without clearance, Reed stood up, walked across the ring chamber in full view of 300 systems, and swapped every offending cup with plastic ones he borrowed from the back room. No speech, no explanation, just a nod. The result? The treaty passed unanimously. The Threxians believed it was a masterful show of silent respect. They signed immediately and gave Earth full credit. From then on, Earth was no longer an observer. Perhaps the problem isn't humans themselves, Nolvesh offered, glancing around the chamber. Perhaps it is that we misunderstand the nature of their peace. Zay looked at him incredulously. Their peace involves meat, music, games, and references to events that never occurred. One of them told me he was trained in the Jedi way. He made whooshing sounds with a light stick. I saw that, Harkon said. That was Kyle. We had to take his glow saber away. He kept swinging it near fuel cells. Is he an officer? Asked Krillon. Nah, HVAC technician. Travels with the team for maintenance. The silence grew heavier. So, Krillon said carefully, your maintenance crew role plays as ancient space monks with plasma weapons? Well, we don't tell them to, Harkon admitted, but they get bored on long trips. It was a mystery to the Council. Human behavior didn't follow protocol, hierarchy, or even consistent logic. They bonded with enemies. They offered unsolicited hugs to war criminals. They renamed cities after snacks. Their influence was like static, always present, hard to isolate, impossible to predict. And yet it worked. Every summit they attended, no matter how disruptive, strange, or farcical, ended with fewer weapons drawn, more laughter shared, and more treaties inked. Let me be clear, Krillon said. We do not deny the outcomes, only the methods. Harkon nodded. We get that, but you've all seen what happens when we send actual military units. The Parolian standoff? We had a trained peacekeeper detail present. It took 6 minutes before someone insulted someone else's war hymns, and a fistfight broke out involving 6 species, 2 banners, and a fish tank. And then? Zay asked dryly. Then we sent in a retired music teacher with a banjo. Disarmed the whole thing with a rendition of Take Me Home, Country Roads. Half the Parolian fleet now broadcasts it during docking procedures. Krillon sank into his chair. This is not warfare. This is witchcraft. We prefer cultural outreach, Harkon said. Across the chamber, Nolvesh stood. Maybe it's time we stop trying to suppress the chaos and start learning from it. What if the very reason peace occurs is because Earth breaks the pattern? While we strategize and calculate, they bring a dog in a backpack and a ukulele. Krillon narrowed his eyes. Are you suggesting we encourage more human chaos? I'm suggesting we accept that Earth's peace comes not from protocol, but from proximity. And when proximity becomes contamination, Say asked, barely containing a snarl. Harkon bit into what appeared to be a fried pickle. Then you'll really wish we just brought our Marines. The High Council's next emergency session was called after the Pudding Armistice. Footage had already gone viral across 6 galaxies. Humans, Draxel, and Yalaxi huddled around a long table. At the center was not a treaty, but a wobbling dessert topped with whipped cream and a cherry. Human delegate Miles Patterson, a school janitor turned diplomatic attaché, was standing with arms wide, voice raised in ceremonial tones. Let this bowl of banana pudding serve as a symbol of sticky unity, he declared, spoon raised. And let he who first violates the ceasefire be cursed with the eternal flavor of overripe fruit. The Draxel captain, confused but respectful, touched his claw to the spoon. The Yalaxi floated closer and blinked in what may have been solemnity. Peace was declared not with signatures, but shared dessert. Nolvesh watched the replay with a strange sense of admiration. They understand something we don't. What, that pudding has diplomatic potential? Zay scoffed. This was supposed to be a ceasefire ceremony. And it worked, said Nolvesh. No weapons were drawn, no demands shouted, just dessert and eye contact. Because the humans are like a virus, Lekvoth snapped. They infect tradition. They make everything into a joke, and somehow we all fall for it. Krillon leaned forward. Not a virus, a gravitational field. Try to ignore them and you get pulled in anyway. The archive drone switched feeds, now playing clips from the so-called Towel Protocol debacle. During a tense summit with the high priests of the Zonari Conclave, a minor human miscommunication about ceremonial robes led to their envoy, Davis, appearing in a terry cloth bath towel. Most races would consider this the height of insult, but Davis bowed, explained it was an earth symbol of humility, which it was not, and complimented the Zonari on their aura fabric. By the end of the session, 5 priests had wrapped themselves in towels, claiming the spiritual clarity was better than their usual silk garb. The treaty passed. A Zonnery spa now operated in orbit around Earth, advertising towel enlightenment. These aren't just incidents, Krillon said. They're systemic anomalies. Say rubbed his head spines. And we keep allowing them into summits. Why? Because the last time we barred humans, Nolvesh said, the summit collapsed in under an hour. The Glarn walked out, the Karkathi bit a translator, and the Draxel declared interstellar hibernation. Then Earth hosted their own summit, in a barn, with barbecue. Every faction signed. Krillon growled. Why is a barn more effective than our sanctum? They served iced tea, Harkon offered, and let people sit on hay bales. Comfortable atmosphere. Comfortable? Lekvoth's voice cracked. They call our peace monuments over-designed egg chairs. One of them tried to sit in the fountain. Harkon laughed. That was Terry. He thought it was a koi pond. Who is Terry? Water systems engineer. Also dabbles in interpretive dance. There was a pause. Why is your water engineer performing dances at peace summits? Zay asked flatly. Morale. He's a hit with the Glarn. Krillon buried his face in his claws. You send engineers, janitors, teachers, short-order cooks, but never military personnel. And yet, Harkon said, peace happens. Doesn't that tell you something? It tells us your civilians are more effective than trained negotiators, Nolvesh muttered, which is terrifying. It's not just effectiveness, said Krillon. It's the method. Every other race approaches peace with precision, with restraint. You show up with a bag of marshmallows and somehow de-escalate nuclear standoffs. Don't forget the card games, Harkon added. Poker's a miracle tool. Why not just send your military? Zay asked. They're trained, controlled, predictable. That's exactly why, Harkon said. See, when humans go to war, we follow rules. Rank, command. But when we go to peace summits, we don't follow anyone's playbook. You think it's chaos, but it's familiarity. Our people walk in like it's a neighborhood barbecue. It disarms everyone. Lekvoth crossed his arms. And what happens when someone doesn't want a barbecue? They still eat, Harkon said with a shrug. Eventually. Nolvesh stood again. Perhaps it's time we stop judging Earth by traditional standards. Maybe they don't attend summits as warriors or politicians, but as catalysts. Krillon frowned. Catalysts for what? For peace, by accident, or instinct, or sheer absurdity. But it happens. Across the chamber, a new feed played, a diplomatic session interrupted by an impromptu karaoke contest. Humans, Glarn, Draxel, even a few Vortian war chaplains took turns howling into a mic. Somewhere in the middle, someone signed a non-aggression pact. Krillon said nothing for a long moment. Then, we still won't let them bring flamethrowers again. That was a cooking demonstration, Harkon said. It was for creme brulee. It set off 3 planetary alarms. Harkon smiled, but no one fought. Krillon stared at the newest report, his claw tapping a slow rhythm against the edge of his datapad. Let me get this straight. You're telling me that during the Kari Crisis Summit, a human resolved a century-old planetary conflict by making everyone tie-dye shirts? Zay answered before Harkon could. Not just shirts. They called it a team-building experience. The Kari delegation described it as therapeutic. They now wear them in their parliament, with pride. They also made friendship bracelets, Harkon added, helped settle resource-sharing terms. The silence in the council chamber was more profound than any ordinance of war. Even Lekvoth had run out of objections. He simply slouched in his chair, as if drained of protest by sheer absurdity. Krillon closed the report. It shouldn't work. But it does, Nolvesh said. We've run the data. 46 summits involving humans. 46 treaties signed. Not always cleanly, not always clearly, but no open conflicts, no return to hostilities. Their presence bends probability. Say stood tall and twitching. Then I ask again, are we to yield to chaos? To abandon structure for spontaneity? There must be order in diplomacy. There must be results, Nolvesh replied, and Earth delivers them. By violating every accepted custom, they wear mismatched socks. They nap in sacred spaces. One ambassador offered a Glarn elder a snack he called road beef jerky. We don't even know what that means. Dried meat from unknown sources, Harkon explained. Very traditional. Bit of a gamble, but builds trust. Trust? Zay's voice cracked again. How is that trust? Harkon leaned forward in his projection. Because nothing says, I don't plan to kill you, like offering food you're not even sure is safe for yourself. Krillon pinched the bridge of his snout. Let me ask you directly, General Harkon. What would happen if Earth did send its actual military to these peace summits? Harkon's smile faded just enough to make the room colder. They'd follow every rule, remain silent unless addressed, observe traditions, speak only through approved channels, wear full-dress uniform, eyes forward, back straight, and if a single threat emerged, verbal or implied, they'd calculate a proportional response in less than a heartbeat. He let that settle. And no one would sign anything, not out of fear, but because fear doesn't build peace. It builds hesitation. Zay looked troubled. Then Earth deliberately sends civilians? These loose agents of unpredictability? They're not loose, Harkon said. They're chosen. Not because they're unpredictable, but because they're human. Fully, unapologetically human. Unscripted, unrefined, but open. Honest. They don't arrive with power. They arrive with presence. They sit. They eat. They laugh. And somehow that breaks barriers nothing else can. Nolvesh nodded. They remind us what peace is supposed to feel like. Which, Krillon murmured, is why the rest of us bring shields to summits and humans bring guitars. Or casseroles, Harkon said. We don't always bring guitars. A junior aide from the Endrak stepped forward, holding a trembling holopad. There's been another development, counselors. Everyone turned. The treaty negotiations between the Enclor and Joran just concluded. The human observers, they organized a sports match, something called kickball. Both sides played. One Joran elder scored a point and was lifted onto the Enclor ambassador's shoulders. Cheers were exchanged. The treaty was signed mid-game, using a marker in the back of a pizza box. Zay stared. A pizza box? It was empty, the aide added quickly. Krillon chuckled, a rare, rusty sound. We've tried sanctions, lectures, mediation, and Earth waltzes in with sandwiches and lawn games and achieves what we couldn't in centuries. Exactly, Harkon said. And you claim this is intentional? Harkon considered. We didn't plan it, but we stopped trying to stop it. That's sort of the human way. Lekvoth spoke quietly now. So the reason Earth never sends its military is because they don't need to, Krillon finished. Their civilians bring more peace than their soldiers ever could. Zay sank back into his chair, finally still. They're not ambassadors, they're catalysts. The chamber fell into deep silence, each species reevaluating centuries of doctrine against a backdrop of pudding bowls, karaoke machines, and barbecue pits. Krillon turned to the floor. Then let it be recorded. Earth is hereby granted perpetual civilian observer status at all peace summits, with unrestricted participation, but no military presence permitted, Zay muttered, and double security around the buffet. Harkon gave a mock salute. Noted. One last message flashed across the chamber monitors. Live footage from the new summit on Ulthar 9. A human in overalls was painting a mural with two small alien children, while representatives from rival factions passed paint cans to each other. One alien grumbled as he smeared a handprint onto the wall, then laughed. Peace, unplanned, undeniable.